Welcome to the Cheating Wife Stories channel. Adrian Brooks stared at the spreadsheet on his computer screen, the blue light reflecting off his angular face. At 42, he still maintained the physique and discipline he'd honed during his 12 years in Navy Special Operations. His dark hair was cut short, with streaks of silver at the temples that gave him an air of distinguished authority. The security consulting firm he built after leaving the military had flourished over the past 7 years. He specialized in high-risk personal security for corporate executives and wealthy families, a career that utilized his tactical skills while allowing him to maintain a stable home life with Maria. They had 15 years of marriage, nearly 2 decades together if you counted their dating years. The thought made him check his watch. 8:30 p.m. Maria had texted that she'd be working late again at her interior design studio for the 3rd time this week. Adrian closed his laptop and moved to the kitchen of their colonial-style home in Silver Lake, an affluent suburb outside Wellington. He opened a bottle of scotch and poured 2 fingers into a crystal tumbler, a gift from Maria on their 10th anniversary. The house phone rang, startling him. Nobody called their landline except telemarketers and Maria's father. "Brooks residence," he answered. "Mr. Brooks, this is Amanda from Pinnacle Realty. I'm just calling to confirm your appointment tomorrow to view the property on Forest Lane." Adrian's brow furrowed. "I think you have the wrong number. We're not looking to buy property." "Oh, I'm so sorry. I must have misdialed. The appointment was for Julian Hayes and Maria Warner. My apologies." The line went dead before Adrian could respond. Maria Warner, her maiden name. And who on earth was Julian Hayes? He placed the tumbler down slowly, his military training kicking in. Assessed the situation, gather intelligence, form a strategy. Taking a deep breath, he opened his laptop again and ran a search for Julian Hayes in Wellington. The results showed a 38-year-old real estate developer with slick promotional photos, handsome in that manufactured way that reminded Adrian of Cologne advertisements. According to his company website, Hayes specialized in luxury condominium conversions. Adrian heard the garage door open. He closed the laptop and returned to his scotch, leaning casually against the kitchen counter as Maria walked in. She was still striking at 40, honey blonde hair falling just below her shoulders, green eyes that could charm or cut depending on her mood. She wore a fitted black dress that wasn't her usual work attire. "You're home," she said, a momentary flash of something. Surprise, annoyance, crossing her features before her practiced smile appeared. "I thought you'd be in your office. Finished early." He raised his glass slightly. "Drink?" "No, I'm exhausted." She placed her purse on the counter, keeping more distance between them than usual. "The Thornton project is killing me. Their demands keep changing." Adrian nodded, watching her with the studied observation that had kept him alive in hostile territories. The way she avoided eye contact, the faint scent of unfamiliar cologne, the slight smudge in her lipstick. "How's the college fund planning going?" he asked casually. Maria brightened, setting down the mail she'd been flipping through. "Actually, I've been meaning to talk to you about that. The financial advisor suggested we look into a home equity option. Interest rates are incredibly low right now. I thought we agreed to use the stock portfolio when the twins are ready for college. The twin girls they'd never had. The fertility treatments that had failed 5 years ago. The adoption applications that Maria had mysteriously wanted to postpone, repeatedly. This would be better financially," she said quickly. "I have the paperwork ready. We just need to sign it before rates change again." Adrian took another sip of his scotch. "Of course. Whatever you think is best." Maria's shoulders relaxed slightly. She moved toward the stairs. "I'm going to shower and go to bed. Don't stay up too late." As her footsteps faded upstairs, Adrian pulled out his phone and texted his old teammate from SEAL Team 6. "Need your help. Discreet surveillance and intel. My house and wife. Starting tomorrow." 2 minutes later, Omar Falcon Rice replied, "Consider it done. Details tomorrow. Anything specific I should know?" Adrian typed back. Name: Julian Hayes, real estate developer, possible property on Forest Lane. He poured another scotch and walked to the living room window, staring out at the manicured lawn Maria had insisted on hiring a professional service to maintain. 15 years of marriage. He'd missed anniversaries during deployments, been shot at in 3 different countries, killed to protect his team and his country. And now, standing in his own home, he felt the same cold, tactical calculation take over that had guided him through the most dangerous operations of his career. Maria had no idea who she was truly dealing with. Over the next 3 days, Adrian maintained his routine, giving Maria no indication that anything had changed. Each morning, he kissed her goodbye before heading to his office downtown. Each evening, he returned at his usual time, engaging in the same surface-level conversations they'd been having for months. Meanwhile, Omar was conducting surveillance, documenting Maria's movements and interactions. Text updates arrived every few hours on a secure messaging app. 10:15 a.m. Subject left house. Followed to studio but entered adjacent building. Office belongs to Hayes Development. 1:30 p.m. Subject and Hayes left office together. Lunch at Viviano's. Intimate behavior. Photos uploaded to secure server. 4:45 p.m. Subject returned to her actual studio. Appears to be maintaining cover of working. Adrian processed the information with clinical detachment. In the field, emotional reactions got you killed. Here, they would only blind him to the full scope of the betrayal. On Thursday afternoon, Omar called. "I've got something significant," he said, without preamble, when Adrian answered. "They're meeting with a lawyer today, Stevenson and Brandt, specializing in real estate transactions. Time: 2:30. Want me to go in?" Adrian considered it. "No, stay on surveillance. I'll handle the legal angle." He ended the call and dialed another number. Clara Henderson had been his company's attorney for 5 years. Brilliant, discreet, and completely ruthless in protecting her client's interests. "Clara, I need a favor that stays between us," he said. "Those are always the interesting ones," she replied. "What's up?" "I need information about a meeting happening at Stevenson and Brandt today, 2:30. Involves Julian Hayes and a woman who may be using the name Maria Warner. Your wife." It wasn't a question. Clara never missed details. "Yes. This sounds matrimonial, Adrian. Not my specialty. Just information gathering for now. I need to know what they're planning before I decide how to respond." There was a pause. "I'll make a call. My paralegal interned there last year. Still has connections." "I appreciate it." "Don't," Clara said. "You've saved my neck enough times with difficult clients. I'll text you when I have something." At 4:17 p.m., his phone buzzed with a message from Clara. "They're preparing transfer documents for your house. Full ownership from joint to your wife only. Also discussed quick sale prep with local realtor. Estimated listing price, $1.2 million. Adrian felt something cold settle in his chest. Not just an affair then, a complete extraction from their life together, taking their home in the process. He pulled up his banking app and checked their joint accounts. The balances were significantly lower than they should have been. A quick review of the transaction history showed multiple large withdrawals over the past 3 months, all made by Maria, just under the threshold that would have triggered a notification. Another text from Omar arrived. Subject: meeting realtor at Starbucks on May. Discussing quick sale options and cash buyers. Realtor suggests clearing out personal items before listing. So that was the plan. Get him to sign away the house, sell it immediately, and disappear with the money. The only question remaining was how she planned to get his signature. That evening, Maria came home with a bottle of his favorite scotch and takeout from the steakhouse he preferred. She wore the emerald silk blouse he'd once mentioned brought out the color of her eyes. "I thought we deserved a nice dinner," she said, setting out the containers on the dining room table. "You've been working so hard lately." "That's thoughtful," he replied, playing along. "Special occasion." She hesitated for just a moment. No, I just realized we haven't had much quality time together recently. Over dinner, she steered the conversation toward the future, asking about his business plans, whether he considered taking on fewer high-risk clients. You've built something secure now. Maybe it's time to enjoy it more, she suggested brightly. Perhaps, he said, refilling her wine glass. You mentioned college fund paperwork earlier this week. Her eyes lit up. Yes, I have everything ready. The timing is perfect with these interest rates. We just need to sign, and we'll be all set. She reached for her purse and pulled out a folder. It's just a standard refinancing form. We can take care of it right now before we forget. Adrian accepted the folder and flipped through the documents, noting the strategic placement of sign here tabs that conveniently obscured the actual purpose of each form. The transfer deed was disguised among refinancing paperwork, buried on page 7, where a casual signer would never notice. Looks good, he said, closing the folder. But let's do this properly tomorrow. I'll have Clara review it first. Standard procedure for anything over $50,000. Maria's smile faltered. That's not necessary. The rate offer expires tomorrow. We should just handle it now. He murmured thoughtfully, taking another bite of steak. What's the exact rate they're offering again? 3.2%, she said quickly. Impressive. Who's the lender? It's through Wellington First. I told you that already. A hint of irritation crept into her voice. Adrian nodded. That's interesting, because I had lunch with Mitchell Bradford from Wellington First last week. He didn't mention any special rates, and we specifically discussed home equity options. Maria's face paled slightly before she recovered. It must be a new promotion. The advisor was very clear about the deadline. What was the advisor's name? I should thank him for such a great opportunity. David. Something. I have his card at the studio. She stood abruptly. You know what? Let's just wait until tomorrow. You're right. We should review everything carefully. She began clearing the plates with more force than necessary. Later that night, as Maria slept, Adrian sat in his home office looking through old photographs. Their wedding day, Maria looking up at him with what he believed was love, vacations they'd taken, the house when they'd first bought it, Maria standing proudly in the driveway. He selected one particular photo, both of them at a charity gala 3 years ago, his arm around her waist, her smile dazzling for the camera. He studied her eyes, searching for any hint of the deception that must have already been forming in her mind. His phone vibrated with a text from Omar. Found link to Hayes' finances. He's underwater on 2 development projects. Needs cash infusion within 60 days or loses everything. The pieces clicked into place. Maria wasn't just leaving him. She and Hayes needed the money from the house. This wasn't just betrayal. It was financial desperation disguised as marital dissatisfaction. Adrian closed the photo album and leaned back in his chair. He'd spent his career reading threat assessments, identifying vulnerabilities, and neutralizing danger before it escalated. Now he would apply those same skills to his own life. Adrian called his office the next morning and delegated his meetings to his second-in-command, citing a family matter. He waited until Maria left for her studio, then made a series of phone calls. First to his bank, where he spoke to the branch manager he'd known for years. By the time the call ended, he'd frozen the joint accounts and secured his personal accounts with additional verification measures. Next, he called a locksmith contact who specialized in high-security systems and scheduled an appointment for later that day. Finally, he reached out to a digital security expert who had worked with his firm on several client protection details. Bryant, I need a comprehensive sweep and security upgrade on my personal devices and home network, today, if possible. For you? Absolutely. What's your concern level? 10. I'll be there in an hour. While waiting, Adrian reviewed the information Omar had compiled on Julian Hayes. The developer had 2 luxury condominium projects that were months behind schedule and significantly over budget. Multiple contractors had filed liens against the properties. He'd recently been denied additional financing from 3 different banks. Hayes needed money, and Maria had a house worth $1.2 million. Bryant arrived with his equipment and spent 3 hours sweeping the house for surveillance devices and securing Adrian's digital footprint. He found 2, a small audio recorder in Adrian's home office and spyware on his personal laptop. Both amateur setups, Bryant said, showing Adrian the devices. Disable them or leave them operational but fed with false info. Leave them operational, Adrian replied without hesitation. By mid-afternoon, the locksmith had changed every external lock on the house and installed a new security system requiring both fingerprint and code access. Adrian was the only authorized user. At 4:30 p.m., Omar arrived with a flash drive containing all the surveillance photos and videos collected over the past 4 days. They sat in Adrian's office reviewing the evidence. "They're sloppy," Omar observed. "Overconfident. She thinks you're oblivious. And he thinks he's smarter than he is," Adrian replied, his voice devoid of emotion. "What's your play?" Adrian stared at a photo of Maria and Hayes embracing outside his office building. "I'm going to sign the papers." Omar raised an eyebrow. "You're giving her the house. After all this, I'm giving her exactly what she wants," Adrian replied, a cold smile touching his lips. "And then I'm taking everything." At 6:15 p.m., Maria returned home to find Adrian sitting in the living room, the folder of documents open on the coffee table before him, his signature freshly applied to each flagged page. "You're home early," she said, hiding her surprise poorly. "Finished my meetings ahead of schedule," he replied. "I decided to review these papers you've been so eager for me to sign. The college fund refinancing, right?" Maria's eyes flicked to the signed documents. "Yes. Exactly. Did you sign them?" "I did. All taken care of." He closed the folder and handed it to her. "I hope this helps secure our future." The genuine shock on her face was quickly masked by a practiced smile. "That's wonderful. I'll drop these off first thing tomorrow." "No rush," he said lightly. "I already scanned and emailed copies to the relevant parties." A flash of panic crossed her features. "You didn't need to do that. I would have handled everything." "Just being efficient," he said, taking another sip of scotch. "I'm going to grab a shower before dinner. I'm thinking we could order in. Celebrate our smart financial planning." As he climbed the stairs, he heard her immediately make a phone call, her voice hushed but urgent. He didn't need to hear the words to know she was calling Hayes to accelerate their plans. The next morning, Saturday, Adrian pretended to leave for his weekly golf game. Instead, he parked a block away and returned on foot, entering through the back door with his new security codes. From his hidden position in his home office, he watched through the security camera system as Maria made a flurry of calls. She paced nervously, repeatedly checking her watch. At 10:30 a.m., a realtor arrived, the same one who had accidentally called their landline. Maria led her through the house, discussing staging strategies and timelines for listing. "We need to move very quickly," Maria was saying, her voice perfectly captured by the home's security microphones. "My husband has signed the transfer documents. Once they're processed Monday morning, the house is mine to sell." "And he's on board with the sale?" the realtor asked. "He'll be informed once everything is finalized," Maria replied smoothly. "It's better this way. A clean break." They discussed pricing strategy, the realtor suggesting they could demand even more than $1.2 million in the current market. Maria practically glowed at the news. After the realtor left, Julian Hayes arrived. Tall and polished in designer casual wear, he swept Maria into an embrace the moment she opened the door. "Did he sign?" were his first words. "Everything," Maria confirmed. "All we need is for the county to process the transfer on Monday, and the house is mine to sell." "Perfect timing," Hayes said, relief evident in his voice. "The bank gave me a final deadline of 30 days. With this cash infusion, We can save both projects and still have plenty left over. For our fresh start, Maria added, kissing him. Hayes pulled back slightly. Are you sure he doesn't suspect anything? Maria laughed. Adrian. He trusts me completely. He's been checked out of this marriage for years, buried in his work, barely noticing I exist. Getting his signature was almost too easy. When will you tell him? Monday morning, after the transfer is complete. I'll give him until Friday to move out. Adrian watched the exchange with cold detachment, recording everything. In his former profession, he'd learned that the most dangerous moment was when you believed you'd already won. Maria and Hayes were already celebrating, blind to the counterattack being prepared. As they continued talking, Adrian silently left the house the same way he entered. He had everything he needed. On Sunday evening, he acted completely normal, helping Maria prepare dinner and discussing an upcoming business trip he'd fabricated. She was visibly anxious, checking her phone frequently, but working hard to maintain her facade. Everything all right? He asked over dinner. You seem distracted. Just a challenging client, she replied. Nothing important. He nodded sympathetically. Monday will be here soon enough. She looked up sharply. What? Monday, he repeated innocently. Fresh start to the week. Always helps put things in perspective. Of course, she agreed, relief flooding her features. A fresh start. Adrian raised his wine glass. To new beginnings. Maria hesitated for just a moment before touching her glass to his. To new beginnings. He smiled, the expression never reaching his eyes. I have a feeling this week is going to change everything. Monday morning arrived with cloudless skies and unusual warmth for early October. Adrian rose at his customary 5:30 a.m., completed his workout in the home gym, and prepared breakfast. By the time Maria came downstairs at 7:15, he had coffee waiting and was reading the newspaper at the kitchen island. You're in a good mood, she observed cautiously, accepting the mug he offered. Beautiful day, he replied. And I've cleared my schedule to work from home today. Her coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. Oh, any particular reason? Just felt like a change of pace. He folded the newspaper and stood. Don't let me keep you from your busy day. Maria wavered, clearly recalculating. Actually, I might work from home as well. We could have lunch together. Unfortunately, I have a video conference at noon that might run long, he said smoothly. Don't change your plans on my account. She wavered again before nodding. I should go in. Client meetings. You know how it is. Of course. The moment her car disappeared down the street, he called Omar. She's heading out now. Stay on her. Roger that. 10 minutes later, the update arrived. Subject heading directly to county clerk's office. Hayes waiting outside. At 9:45 a.m., Adrian's phone rang. It was Clara. The transfer documents were just submitted, she said, but they've been flagged for review due to an administrative anomaly. What kind of anomaly? The kind that mysteriously appeared in the system over the weekend, Clara replied, a hint of amusement in her tone. It's going to require manager approval, which won't be available until Wednesday at the earliest. How unfortunate, Adrian said. I'm guessing Maria wasn't pleased. Apparently, she demanded to speak to supervisors and threatened legal action, eventually left looking distressed. Thank you, Clara. I owe you. Just doing my job. The paperwork you sent over this morning has been filed. By the way, you now have official documentation of all joint assets and their current status. By noon, Omar reported that Maria and Hayes were having an intense conversation at a cafe near the county offices. She appeared distraught. He looked increasingly agitated. By 2:30 p.m., Adrian received another update. Subject returning home. Alone. Hayes left in opposite direction. Adrian positioned himself in the living room, reviewing documents on his laptop, projecting casual productivity. When the front door opened, he looked up with mild interest. Maria's expression cycled between shock, fear, and forced composure when she saw him. "I thought you had meetings," she said. "Finished early," he replied, closing his laptop. "Everything all right? You look upset." She smoothed her hair, buying time. "Just a difficult client situation. Nothing I can't handle." Adrian nodded sympathetically. Clients can be unpredictable. Sometimes they don't understand what's in their best interest. "Exactly," she agreed, visibly relieved by his apparent obliviousness. "I'm going to make some calls from the study." "Before you go," he said, tone unchanged, "did you manage to submit that refinancing paperwork this morning?" She froze. "Yes, but there was a problem with the processing. Just a technical delay." "That's unfortunate. Bureaucracy can be frustrating when you're in a hurry." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "It's just a short delay. Everything will be resolved soon." "I'm sure it will." As she turned to leave, he added casually, "By the way, I've been meaning to ask, how's Julian Hayes?" The color drained from Maria's face. She turned slowly, her hand gripping the doorframe. "Who?" "Julian Hayes," Adrian repeated patiently. "Real estate developer. Your lover. The man you're planning to sell our house to fund his failing projects." That Julian Hayes. Maria's shock quickly transformed into calculated recovery. "I don't know what you're talking about. I met Mr. Hayes once at a charity function. He's a potential client." "Interesting," Adrian said, opening his laptop again. "I have a different understanding of your relationship." He turned the screen toward her, showing a photo of her kissing Hayes outside his office building. "This is an invasion of privacy," she sputtered. "You had me followed." "Let's call it due diligence," Adrian replied. "Basic threat assessment, standard procedure in my line of work." "You had no right." "No right?" Adrian's voice remained eerily calm. "Like you had no right to drain our joint accounts, or install spyware on my laptop, or attempt to transfer our house into your name under false pretenses." Each accusation landed like a precise strike. Maria's indignation collapsed into calculation. "Adrian, listen," she began, placating. "Our marriage has been over for years. We both know that. I just wanted a clean break without a messy. We'll sell the house, split the proceeds fairly, and go our separate ways." "Reasonable," Adrian repeated. "Like when you plan to tell me I have until Friday to vacate my own home." Her eyes widened. "How could you possibly know? That was your plan, wasn't it?" He continued as if she hadn't spoken. "Process the transfer Monday, inform me of my eviction, sell the house to a mysteriously ready cash buyer, Hayes working through a shell company, and disappear with the money while I'm still trying to figure out what happened." Maria seemed to deflate, sinking into a chair. "What do you want, Adrian?" "I want you to call Hayes. Tell him to come over. We should discuss this situation together." "Why would I do that?" Adrian smiled, a chilling emptiness behind it. "Because if you don't, I'll file fraud charges against both of you immediately. The evidence is quite compelling." He gestured to his laptop. "One call to the authorities, and both your careers are over. Your choice." 30 minutes later, Julian Hayes arrived, looking haggard and nervous. Adrian gestured for him to sit beside Maria on the sofa while he remained standing. "Thank you for joining us, Mr. Hayes," Adrian said. "I believe we have some property matters to discuss." "Listen, Brooks," Hayes began, his sales persona activating. "I understand this is unexpected, but I think we can reach an agreement that benefits everyone." "Let me stop you there," Adrian interrupted calmly. "This isn't a negotiation. This is me informing you both of what happens next." He opened a folder and removed several documents, placing them on the coffee table. "First, the transfer documents you submitted have been flagged for review. They will ultimately be rejected due to fraud and misrepresentation." He pointed to the next document. "Second, I filed a formal complaint with the Bar Association regarding the attorney who prepared these fraudulent documents." Hayes paled. "Now, wait a minute." "Third," Adrian continued, I've documented every unauthorized withdrawal from our joint accounts over the past 3 months. He looked directly at Maria. The total comes to $218,500. You have 24 hours to return those funds before I file criminal charges. Maria's composure shattered. You wouldn't dare. It'd be your word against mine. Actually, Adrian said, removing a small digital recorder from his pocket, it'd be your word against your own. Would you like to hear how clearly this device captures audio? He pressed play. Maria's voice filled the room. Adrian trusts me completely. He's been checked out of this marriage for years. Getting his signature was almost too easy. Hayes jumped in. This is entrapment. You can't record people without their knowledge. Bayfield is a two-party consent state. Adrian agreed. Except when there's documented evidence of criminal conspiracy, which there is, or when the recordings are made by home security systems, also permitted on property I own. He turned to Maria. You should have researched the law more carefully before plotting to steal my house. What do you want? Hayes demanded, his smooth confidence gone. From you. Nothing. You're irrelevant. Adrian's dismissal was absolute. From my wife. A clean, uncontested divorce with these terms. He slid another document across the table. She keeps her design business, her personal accounts, and the assets she brought into the marriage. I keep the house, my business, and all joint assets. No alimony, no further contact. Maria scanned the document, anger and disbelief on her face. This is highway robbery. No, Adrian corrected. Highway robbery is what you attempted. This is consequence. And if I refuse, then tomorrow morning, your clients, your family, and several newspapers receive copies of every piece of evidence I collected. He shrugged. Your choice. Hayes stood abruptly. I need to make a call. Sit down, Adrian ordered, his voice carrying the unmistakable command presence that had once directed special ops teams in crisis zones. Hayes sat automatically. You're not making calls. You're not leaving until this is resolved. Maria looked between them, then back at the divorce agreement. You've been planning this since when? Since the moment I learned what you were doing, Adrian confirmed. Unlike you, I don't leave things to chance. After another hour, Maria finally signed the divorce papers and agreed to return the withdrawn funds. Hayes slunk away, already calculating how to save himself without Maria's promised windfall. As Maria packed a suitcase in strained silence, Adrian leaned against the bedroom doorframe. You know what the saddest part is? He said, I would have given you a fair settlement if you'd just asked for a divorce like a normal person. She zipped her suitcase closed. You would have fought me on everything. This was cleaner. Cleaner, he repeated. That's one word for betrayal. Like you're innocent, she snapped. Always gone, always putting your work first. The great protector who couldn't be bothered to notice his own wife's unhappiness. I noticed, he said quietly. I just mistakenly thought we were working through it together. My error. She lifted her suitcase. I'll send for the rest of my things. You have until the end of the week, he replied. After that, anything left becomes property of the house, just like you planned for my belongings. As she walked down the stairs, he added, one last thing, Maria. If you ever try to contact me again after our divorce is finalized, I'll release everything I have. Every recording, photo, and bank statement. Is that clear? Her shoulders stiffened, but she nodded once before continuing. The front door closed. Adrian walked to his office and poured a scotch. He should have felt triumphant. Instead, he felt hollow. Over the next few days, Adrian's counter-strategy methodically took shape. Omar continued surveillance, confirming that Maria was indeed meeting with Hayes, trying to salvage some quick real estate deal. Clara provided legal reinforcements. Adrian froze or secured every asset. By the weekend, the divorce's legal framework was set, and Maria's plan to sell the house was in ruins. But then Omar uncovered additional layers of deception. Digging into Hayes' background after he fled to Miami, Omar found suspicious ties to an investor named Richard Farnsworth, who had once been involved with Maria as well. Farnsworth died in a boating accident in Eslavento under circumstances that, while officially accidental, had enough irregularities to raise questions. Financial records showed Farnsworth had recently changed his will, naming Maria a beneficiary for a substantial insurance policy, a policy that paid out 3 months before her attempt to steal Adrian's house. When Julian Hayes unexpectedly returned to Wellington seeking a meeting, Adrian carefully arranged backup and counter-surveillance. At a small coffee shop, Hayes confessed fear for his own safety. Maria, he said, was dangerous and might have been involved in Farnsworth's death. The USB drive Hayes handed over contained emails between Maria and Farnsworth's assistant, detailing Farnsworth's boating itinerary, plus suspicious financial transfers. Hayes fled the country again that night, faced with the possibility that Maria had orchestrated more than just financial fraud. Adrian activated even deeper security protocols. If she'd been involved in Farnsworth's death, what might she do if cornered? Indeed, she escalated, hiring a former special operator, Stephen Graves, to intimidate Adrian. But Adrian was ready. He responded with Protocol Echo, orchestrating a precise, overwhelming counterattack, delivering evidence packets about Farnsworth's death to federal authorities, leveraging multiple angles of legal and financial scrutiny, and ensuring Maria's short-lived illusions of control shattered completely. In the following days, the FBI launched an inquiry. The insurance company froze the remaining policy funds, and Maria attempted to flee on a flight to Zurich. She was intercepted by federal agents at the airport, questioned, released with a directive to remain in the state, and soon found herself out of options, financially, legally, and personally. Her father, Malcolm Warner, tried to bribe Adrian with $10 million to recant his allegations, but Adrian turned over the evidence of the bribe to the FBI. Malcolm was brought in for questioning, and Maria spiraled into desperation. Eventually, she accepted a plea deal on financial crimes to avoid more serious charges regarding Farnsworth's death, for which there wasn't enough conclusive proof. She would serve time in federal prison for the fraud, extortion, and other related offenses she had committed. The court finalized Adrian's divorce settlement under the original terms he insisted upon. He kept his house and business, and his reputation remained intact. Julian Hayes, having cooperated to save himself, vanished overseas. Malcolm Warner, disgraced and financially entangled, distanced himself from his daughter's legal nightmare. On the last night before her surrender to the authorities, Maria called Adrian one final time. He let it ring several times before picking up. In a trembling voice, she asked if any of it had been worth it, destroying everyone around them, leaving nothing but ruins of 15 years of marriage. Adrian answered with quiet honesty that he found no victory in any of it, but had done what was necessary to protect himself. She hung up without another word. Alone in the home he'd fought to keep, Adrian stared out at the darkened street. The tactical operation was complete, every threat neutralized. He protected his life's work from betrayal, but the cost was a gaping emptiness that victory could not fill. There were no winners, only survivors. Nodding to himself, he closed the blinds and returned to his desk. He had clients to safeguard, new contracts to fulfill. He would move forward with the same precision and control that had guided his every step. Nothing less, nothing more.